Hey, so in the last week or so, I wasn't feeling great, and I noticed that I'm basically very bored all the time, and I wondered why am I bored? So it inspired me to make a short video about the topic of curiosity and boredom, and yeah, what that means for you. So I guess for all phases in my life there I have been bored for some periods, right? Sometimes if I think about school, I could be bored during class, but afterwards I was happy playing outside of the school or something like that, or in the breaks talking to my classmates. um, but even after school, when I got older, there are periods where like over a couple of weeks, let's say, uh, like on average I would be quite bored. And then there are other times where over like weeks or months, on average I would be never bored, like super enthusiastic, inspired, um, creative. So it seems that in my life, boredom comes and goes, creativity comes and goes, and I haven't still figured out exactly all of the factors and the entire um, relationship between these factors and what that means in the end for whether I'm bored or not. But uh, today I want to focus on curiosity, because I think curiosity is somehow a human superpower. Um, Animals might be curious too, so it could also be an animal superpower. um, the point I want to make is that actually there never needs to be a reason to be bored, because no matter about what, no matter why you're bored or what you're dealing with right now that is boring to you, you can always make it interesting. Like always. Let's say when I'm in class and I'm bored, maybe I'll start a little game with my neighbor, or I start, tapping on the table, and immediately I'm like kind of not bored again, not bored anymore. um, and of course, nowadays I have more liberty how I spend my time. I don't need to sit in class anymore, luckily. But still, I get bored. Sometimes, maybe at the doctor, I have to wait for half an hour, or in public transport. I'm even bored at home. Um, so when I'm bored, for me, that can mean two different things. Either, like in the recent days, my boredom comes after a long time of being very inspired and very creative. And then my boredom tells me that probably now I need some creative break. I need some time to recharge, some time to take care of myself. And due to being so creative and inspired, there was a lot of input, and now my entire system needs some time to kind of process everything. And this processing can happen when I'm bored. So I usually, I'm in front of the laptop, I'm in front of my phone, I talk to people. There's not a lot of times in my day where there's no information input. So when I'm bored, it's kind of, uh, it encourages me not to take in more information. And I want to become more conscious about this, but I think I found a good way to kind of read my boredom. And when I notice that I'm bored, for example, what I will do is I call it sitting in silence. So I literally just sit in my room for 10 minutes or as long as I can because it's not easy. Maybe I will shut down the light and I will sit on the carpet and I'll just sit there for 10 or 15 minutes. And usually what happens is that the first few minutes are really difficult. Um, and this is also different than a meditation because I don't close my eyes when I sit in silence, but in a meditation I usually close my eyes. Um, like I will just sit there and try to do nothing, and it's so difficult for the first few minutes. Like my entire system just wants to get up and like grab the phone or go out for a walk or eat and watch a movie. Like so many automatic patterns, I would say. But after the first couple minutes, what happens is that like a certain kind of calmness comes into my system. Like my breath is more regular. My thoughts are more calm. My body feels nice, like comfortable, uh, and then usually I will have really good ideas. Like I don't know how, I don't know why, but I will just know something. For example, a big project I want to do next, or I forgot something important and it comes up again. So that's when I then usually take out my pen and just take notes. um, so that is one signal that boredom can be for me, which is kind of, hey Nilan, you have a lot of input. You had a lot of input recently. It's time to slow down and reflect and process. Um, and the other kind of boredom is basically telling me. So when I don't have a lot of input recently, this kind of boredom is telling me, hey, I want to be entertained. I want to learn something. And this is where curiosity kicks in. Um, so I wanna make a small segment about interest. So why we find certain things interesting and certain things we find boring. And first of all, I think it's a very individual thing, right? There are some movies that you can't watch at all, you fall asleep, but some of your friends might be the biggest fan of this movie. Um, but I do think that with your curiosity, you can make everything interesting, no matter how boring it is. So let's say the movie that you're finding so boring, and you have to watch it with your friend right now, right? They are forcing you because it's their favorite movie. um, so let's say the plot of the movie is boring. You don't like the genre. Maybe it's action comedy, and that's just super boring to you. You don't know any of the actors. So what can you do? And I think that usually asking questions, is such a nice way to spark interest. And a question, of course, is driven by curiosity. So if you think about the most boring movie you can imagine, what are you curious about learning more about it? And one thing that I think is always funny is to go into a meta level. So if you ask yourself, okay, this movie is so boring, why are people watching it? Why are there people that are watching this movie? But to me, it's the most boring movie ever. So I don't know. Like I'm just thinking right now about this question. I mean, taste of people is different. Maybe some people want to watch a boring movie just to have some background noise. Maybe the director of the movie, like has some different kind of movies they make. One of them is action comedies, but another one is like super exciting thriller, maybe. So they just have a different set of movies that they want to create. Um, maybe I don't know. The movie was made in a time where there were a lot of boring action comedies that were just created with a cheap budget. Maybe they had a famous actor who drives the revenue, but the movie is actually super boring, and it was just a quick way to make money, for example. So there's one entire kind of universe you can explore. You can research the actors, you can research the movie, and you can even start asking these questions while watching the movie, and immediately, I mean, that would be one way to not get bored, I hope. Um, Another question you can ask is, why does my friend like this movie so much? You maybe don't know, maybe they haven't talked about it yet, so you could actually ask them, hey, this movie is so boring to me, why do you like it? And maybe, they maybe say they also think it's boring, but they were watching it with their best friend, and it reminds them of their best friend, or I don't know, it reminds them of a good time in the cinema, or um, they also think it's boring, but they are just interested in educating themselves about cinema. So you can start a conversation with your friend. Um, so the point I'm trying to make is, whenever you're bored, uh, either it's a sign to slow down and take care of yourself, check back in with you. Why are you bored? Is there an emotion behind it? Is there some thoughts behind it that you need to process? And in my experience, when you check in with yourself, you will find some inspiration behind your boredom. Or the other possibility is, you're bored because you weren't connected with your curiosity, and it's time to ask questions, open your eyes, use all your senses and your mind to learn more about this world and about yourself. Because whenever you learn something new about anything, you also learn something new about yourself. And as a last segment, really focusing on curiosity. Curiosity in itself is very arbitrary, like interest. Some people are interested in some movies, some people are interested in other movies, but you have a certain control over your curiosity. I would say that ultimately, you cannot control your curiosity, but you can focus on certain parts, on certain aspects of your curiosity more than on others. And the more consciously you do that, the more you can influence in which direction you are developing, or in which direction a conversation is developing. So, for example, whenever you find yourself in a conversation, it might be with multiple people, and you're starting to feel like the conversation is getting boring to you. If it's a bigger social event, of course, one option is to just leave the conversation and find something else, another conversation that you can join. Um, but probably a better option is to drive the conversation in a direction that is interesting to you. And again, the best tool to do so is asking questions. So if someone tells something that is boring to you, um, and you think it's not boring to them, you can make it a task for yourself to find out why it is not boring for them. Because maybe you just don't understand the topic well enough to understand why it's interesting. So it's an opportunity for you to learn something new. Or the person thinks it's interesting because of, let's say, a personal experience of those. So I gave some examples with the movie before, but basically it's always more interesting to understand why a person has a certain preference, rather than the preference itself. You could, you know, you could like a certain food, like liking pizza, for example, doesn't make you interesting because it's so common. But maybe you like pizza because you have Italian roots and your grandma had one of the best pizza recipes. And immediately that's a personal story, it's a personal connection. We all understand why that's interesting to you, and it creates a connection. If I learn that about someone, it makes me happy, and suddenly pizza becomes more interesting to me because I understand the point of view of this person better. So yeah, these are my quick thoughts on boredom, curiosity, interest, and I hope I could spark your curiosity. And um, yeah, I definitely could spark mine. See you around.